The Book of Revelation, Chapter 17. In our last lesson, we saw the pouring out of the 7 last plagues in rapid succession. Now, in chapters 17 and 18, the action will slow down again, and we will get 2 more flashbacks that will provide background information that explains the significance of the pouring out of the 7 last plagues and the coming of the Battle of Armageddon in chapter 19. Based on the information we have in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, the pouring out of the 7 last plagues in Revelation 16 probably takes place during a 30-day period between the 1260 days and the 1290 days. This means that the events of Revelation chapters 18 and 19 take place at or near the end of the 1290 days. We're ready to begin our lesson now in Revelation chapter 17, verse 1. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke to me, saying, "Come here, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot, who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of immorality, and those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns." Revelation chapter 17, verse 4, "The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered greatly, and the angel said to me, 'Why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns.'" Revelation 17, verse 8, "The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss, and go to destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast, that he was and is not, and will come. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while." Revelation 17, verse 11, "The beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. These will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are the called and chosen and faithful." Verse 15, "And he said to me, The waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw, and the beast, these will hate the harlot, and will make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh, and will burn her up with fire. For God has put it in their hearts to execute his purpose by having a common purpose, and by giving their kingdom to the beast, until the words of God will be fulfilled. The woman whom you saw is the great city, which reigns over the kings of the earth." The first thing that we see in this passage is that John sees a great harlot and a scarlet beast. Both of these images are symbols designed to hide their true meaning from non-Christians. The key to decoding these symbols is to let the Bible interpret the Bible. In many Old Testament prophecies, a harlot is a symbol for an immoral city. For example, in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 21, we read, "See how the faithful city, that is, Zion, has become a harlot. She once was full of justice. Righteousness resided within her, but now only murderers." In the book of Daniel, a beast is a symbol for a Gentile empire. A horn is a symbol for a king, and a mountain is a symbol for a kingdom. The second thing that we see in this passage is that there are key features that help us to identify the great harlot. For example, she sits on, that is, she rules over, many waters, which are described as nations and peoples and languages. She commits immorality, that is, sin, with kings, the kings of the earth. That means she is a political entity. She intoxicates people with her immorality. That means she misleads them in a spiritual way. She rides the scarlet beast, that is, she controls it, in the same way that a rider on top of a horse guides the horse by riding it and controlling it. She is wearing expensive clothing. Scarlet and purple dyes in the ancient world were extremely expensive, so clothing made out of scarlet and purple was extremely expensive. She's also wearing jewelry and gold. That means, or implies, that she has great wealth. She also holds a cup, a gold cup, in her hand full of her intoxicating sinfulness. And she is drunk with the blood of Christian martyrs. That means she participates in the persecution of God's church. We also see that she has a name written on her forehead. This will give us the key characteristics to understand who she is and what her nature is. She is called Babylon the Great, which is the name of an ancient and ungodly city. We see that she has daughters, which would represent vassal cities subordinate to her, who are also harlots. That means these cities that are subordinate to her are also evil cities. She is also the mother of earthly abominations or sins, which means she is the source of these things. She promotes them. She promulgates them upon the world. She sits on, that is, rules over, 7 mountains, that is, 7 kings or kingdoms. And finally, she is called the great city that reigns over the kings of the earth. So this is a city that is the capital of an empire. Since she is called Babylon the Great, we need to go back in history and understand from the Bible the origins of Babylon. Nimrod founded the city of Babel, which means confusion, shortly after the flood, when he became the world's first tyrant, as we see in Genesis chapters 10 and 11. And so our current anti-God civilization started at the Tower of Babel. The political, economic, military, and religious traditions of our current anti-God civilization all had their foundation at the Tower of Babel. In this picture, you see a city map of the ancient city of Babylon, showing the river Euphrates running through it with major areas among her inner and outer walls. This ancient city was filled with pagan temples to the worship of pagan gods. And because the river Euphrates ran right through the center of the city, Babylon truly sat on many waters in a physical sense. But as we see in Revelation, this also has a spiritual meaning. Babylon ruled over vassal kings and traded with many peoples. she interacted with many different languages, nations, and tribes. In the upper portion of this picture, you can see a dragon representing the ancient Babylonian god Marduk, and in the lower portion of the picture, a bull representing the Babylonian god Adad. These two images are taken from the Ishtar Gate of Babylon, one of the major city gates entering into this ancient city, which has been restored by archaeologists at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. Around 700 BC, almost 100 years before the Babylonian exile, the prophet Isaiah made the following prediction. In Isaiah chapter 13, verse 17, we read, "Behold, I am going to stir up the Medes against them, against Babylon, who will not value silver or take pleasure in gold, and their bows will mow down the young men, and they will not even have compassion on the fruit of the womb, nor will their eye pity children. And Babylon, the beauty of kingdoms, the glory of the Chaldeans' pride, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It will never be inhabited or lived in from generation to generation, nor will the Arab pitch his tent there, nor will shepherds make their flocks lie down there." Isaiah 13, verse 21, "But desert creatures will lie down there, and their houses will be full of owls. Ostriches also will live there, and shaggy goats will frolic there. Hyenas will howl in their fortified towers, and jackals in their luxurious palaces. Her fateful time also will soon come, and her days will not be prolonged." Notice that within this prophecy, this list includes many unclean birds and animals. That will become significant when we study Revelation chapter 18. But the main point here is that after the Medes conquered the Babylonian Empire and destroyed the city of Babylon in 539 BC, the city slowly declined over the next 650 years and then collapsed by the early 2nd century AD, never again to be rebuilt. Thus, this city, Babylon, the ancient city of Babylon, can't be the city being discussed in Revelation chapter 17 and 18. Babylon here is being used as a metaphor. In Revelation chapter 17, verse 18, the angel told John, "The woman whom you saw is the great city, which reigns over the kings of the earth." In this passage, the verb for is a Greek present tense verb, meaning that this city in John's day is a great city. Babylon at that time was no longer a great city. And he says that this city reigns using a present active participle. This is something that is occurring in John's day. This city is reigning over kings in John's time. The angel also told John that the harlot, which represents this great city, is drunk with the blood of Christian martyrs. The only great city in existence in John's day that was reigning over kings and persecuting Christians was Rome. Babylon is a code word for Rome. In a physical sense, Rome was built on 7 hills and sits on the Tiber River. Thus, she sits on many waters, just as the angel described. So Rome is the new capital of the anti-God civilization that started in ancient Babylon. Rome is a reincarnation of the ancient evil city of Babylon. The third thing that we see in this passage is that there are key features that identify the scarlet beast. It is full of blasphemous names, which suggests that this beast is deeply evil. It is scarlet, the color of blood, like the red horse of war that we saw in Revelation chapter 6, verse 4. It has 7 heads and 10 horns, just like the red dragon, suggesting that it has a satanic origin. it has the exact same silhouette as the red dragon, which represents Satan the devil. It was and is not and will come again. By saying that it is not suggests that it will cease to exist for a time, and then it will come back again. It also comes up out of the abyss, again showing that it has a demonic origin. It is backed up by demonic power. There are 7 heads on this beast that represent 7 mountains or kingdoms, as we see in Daniel chapter 2, verses 34 through 45. So there are 7 kings or kingdoms associated with this beast. The angel told John that 5 of these 7 kingdoms have fallen. 1 is, and 1 has not yet come. The beast, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns, is part of the 7 kingdoms, but it is also an 8th separate kingdom. The 10 horns represent 10 future contemporaneous kings. So there will be 10 rulers who rule at the same time over 10 nations or groups of nations. All 10 of these kings have one mind, to give their authority to an individual called the Beast, who will lead an evil empire just before Christ returns. The angel also told John that these 10 kings will receive authority with the beast for a short amount of time. They will wage war against the Lamb, and they will lose. This is a reference to the battle that is coming after the kings of the world assemble at Megiddo. They will also hate the great harlot and will destroy her. So here in Revelation 17, we see that this scarlet beast is similar to, yet different than, the land beast that we read about in Revelation chapter 13. Daniel saw many different animal symbols in his visions that depicted the Persian and Greco-Macedonian empires in Daniel chapters 7 and 8. The bear in Daniel chapter 7 was a ram in Daniel chapter 8, and the leopard in Daniel chapter 7 was a goat in Daniel chapter 8. But the meaning of these visions was the same. It referred to the same ancient Gentile empires that persecuted God's people. The visions of Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, and Revelation 17 match the same pattern of Gentile kingdoms that will precede the kingdom of God. This provides a basis for decoding the symbols of Revelation chapter 17. It becomes the key that unlocks the meaning of the symbols of Revelation 17. In this chart, we see a side-by-side comparison of the key features of the prophecies of Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, and Revelation 17. In Daniel chapter 2, Daniel saw a colossus that had a head of gold, representing the Babylonian Empire, a silver chest, representing the Persian Empire, a bronze belly and thighs that represented the Greco-Macedonian Empire, iron legs, which represented the Empire of Rome, and then feet of iron mixed with clay and 10 toes that represented a future coming resurrected Roman Empire. In Daniel chapter 7, these same empires were represented as animals. In Daniel 7, the lion represented the Babylonian Empire. The bear represented the Persian Empire. The leopard, with its 4 heads, represented the Greco-Macedonian Empire. After Alexander the Great died, his kingdom was divided among his 4 generals, Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. Then we see a beast with iron teeth that correspond with the iron legs of Daniel chapter 2. This beast with iron teeth represents the coming Roman Empire. And there are 10 horns on this beast with iron teeth. Revelation chapter 13 gave us a beast with 7 heads. The first head represented Babylon, the second head represented Persia, 4 heads represented the Greco-Macedonian Empire, and then the 7th head represented Rome. One of those heads, Rome, was wounded with a deadly wound that came back to life again. And then there were 10 horns on this beast, which represented the 10 kings that we've been discussing. So now, in Revelation chapter 17, Babylon is pictured as a great harlot. The 5 fallen kingdoms are Persia and the 4 Greco-Macedonian successors. The current kingdom in John's time is Rome. The kingdom that is yet to come is the revived Holy Roman Empire, which existed during the Middle Ages. And the 10 horns on this scarlet beast represent the same 10 kings that are pictured as horns in Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 13. 10 kings that will reign just before the return of Jesus Christ. However, Revelation 17 doesn't provide us with any definite guidance about these 5 fallen kingdoms. So other options are possible. For example, we could count these 5 fallen empires in a different way. The first one would be the Babylonian Empire, represented by the golden head. The second one could be the Persian Empire with its chest of silver. The Greco-Macedonian Empire might be the belly of bronze, and the Seleucid and Ptolemaic empires could be the left and right thighs of bronze. These would also represent 5 fallen kingdoms. And each of these 5 kingdoms conquered Jerusalem and controlled the Holy Land at one time or another in ancient history. However, what we do know with certainty is that in Daniel chapter 2, the iron legs were replaced with feet of iron and clay. And in Revelation 13, one head, which represents Rome, was wounded and then revived. Ancient history tells us that the Roman Empire fell and then came back to life again as the Holy Roman Empire. Truly, it was and is not and will come again. Of all these 4 Gentile empires, it was Rome and only Rome which fell and came back to life again. This is underscored by the fact that the iron legs were replaced with feet of iron and clay, again showing that it is Rome that will fall and come back to life again. We should also remember from ancient history that at the request of the papacy during the Middle Ages, the Holy Roman Empire and allied feudal states established a short-lived Kingdom of Jerusalem in the Holy Land. The Holy Roman Empire will reappear one last time, led by 10 kings with a similar goal in mind, but the Antichrist will hijack this final revival of the Holy Roman Empire. Thus, it is the Antichrist who is of the 7, but is also an 8th separate kingdom. Daniel chapter 2, verses 40 through 43, says that this revived Holy Roman Empire will be partly strong and partly weak, just as iron mixed with clay is not strong. Iron represents Rome, and Rome is a European power, not a Middle Eastern power. This revived Roman Empire will not be associated with Middle Eastern kingdoms or the religion of Islam. It will be a European power. But it will be a mixture of different peoples that don't stick together. There will be tension and friction in this alliance. This friction may help to explain the hatred of the 10 kings against the great harlot. They resent her overbearing control. They want to throw off her yoke. The great harlot may also be competing with the Antichrist for the worship and loyalty of the people of this empire. thus setting up the possibility that this friction is related to the tension between a church and state union in the last days. And the fourth thing that we see in this passage is that the beast is a demonic king. The beast is a powerful demon who comes up out of the abyss and wages war against the two witnesses, as we saw in Revelation chapter 9 and Revelation chapter 11. He possesses the body of a human being called the man of lawlessness, the son of destruction, as we see in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, Revelation 16, verse 13, and Mark chapter 5, verse 9. People who are demon-possessed are controlled and guided through the power of Satan. People also refer to this beast as the Antichrist, a false Messiah and the ruler of Satan's kingdom on earth. In our next lesson, we'll cover Revelation chapter 18, where we will see the fall of Babylon the Great.